Pandemic is happening. We're all gonna die. Who knows? But stay tuned and we'll figure this one out maybe and try to come up with some ways that you can protect yourself from a potential pandemic. Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis, the Prepared Homestead. And so there has been a lot of talk online and in the news about this coronavirus in Asia and how it is the next new biggest pandemic that's going to wipe us off the face of the planet. You know, at first I was kind of not interested in making a video on this, but it seems to be a lot of hype and a lot of fear that's being spread about it. And so I thought maybe we could kind of look at it, analyze it, and maybe some of you could kind of better have a grasp of what's going on, and along the way also come up with some ideas on actually how to protect ourselves from a potential pandemic. So let's get this thing started. You know, there's not been a lot of cases. I don't think it's quite to the level of calling it a pandemic. From my research, there's been less than 500 confirmed cases of this virus, and it appears that only about 9 or so have died. So it's, you know, it's not a lot, but I do understand where there could be the potential for this. As of just a couple of days ago, it seemed to be a confirmation that there was a case in the United States, although apparently the CDC has known about that one for over a week now and has chosen to not go public with that warning. Big surprise there. And then I heard this morning of an unconfirmed case in Australia. So if that's true, I believe that makes 3 continents now that this coronavirus is on. And I am no expert in, viruses and pathology. But what my understanding is that they believe that this started from an animal and then, transferred to a human, and now there's human-to-human transfer of this. And it's airborne, and it is something similar to, say, SARS. It's causes upper respiratory and pneumonia-like symptoms, and the people typically that have died because of the pneumonia symptoms. And so I don't really want to go into the details of the actual virus, mostly because that's just not something I'm an expert in. But there has been a lot of hype about it, and I always find it interesting that when there are things that we know are worthy of concern, the media chooses to ignore. And then when there's things that, are kind of iffy, but can certainly, create a lot of hype and hysteria, it's everywhere. And just about every news agency on the planet, to my knowledge, is running this story. It's all over the social media networks, and it's all over, regular mainstream media. And there are some people that are getting concerned. Looks like that they're going to be screening now at 5 or 6 airports that typically bring passengers in from Asia, from China. People are just kind of wondering if this is the next biggest one. And as it stands right now, I'm not convinced that it is. Every few years we have these various viruses that certainly take lives, and I guess do have the potential for them to be catastrophic, and yet they kind of fizzle out. And I mean, there's a lot of theories going around about why that is. Could it be testing the public? Are these viruses lab created and tested into the public to kind of see public reaction, to see how well they work? Because it's interesting that there's always an immediate vaccine for these viruses that are mysteriously come out of nowhere. And so, I guess that there's definitely some potential there for that sort of thing. There was another another YouTuber made the video, and it was pretty interesting. And I'll admit that I haven't done any other research other than watching his video. But if you want to watch it, many of you probably know who this guy is. It's Ice Age Farmer. And I'll leave a link in the description. But you can go over and check his video out. And he found some interesting research that a lot of these viruses could be connected to grand solar minimums. And what the scientific research showed is that when we're in a solar minimum, that because of the reduced radiation, reduced sunspots, that it allows more viruses that float around in outer space around our planet. It allows them to penetrate into our atmosphere and not die because of the lack of radiation, therefore bringing down some of these strange and new viruses that kind of float around out in the atmosphere down here to Earth. And it did say that one of the weakest spots in that atmosphere is over the Asian continent. And so that's why many times these random weird viruses show up there. So it also said that through the study, they've shown that over the last several grand solar minimums, that there were almost always large pandemic outbreaks during that time. So it's an interesting theory, and it does kind of make sense, but I have not studied it. But I thought I'd put that out there also. So if you want to go watch that video and kind of do your own research or make a decision, I will leave a link in the description below for that. Now, excuse me. What is really going on? I know that I don't know that answer, and I know that there's a lot of theories, but I'm quite certain that there's more nefarious things going on than just, by coincidence, an accidental virus happens and it just, miraculously morphs into human to human, transfer, and it starts getting spread around. I think that there's, we know that our government and other governments create these types of pathogens. They play around with them, and sometimes they unleash them. So is this one of those cases? I don't know. I did see something that was unconfirmed, that apparently some people are saying that they have evidence showing that this virus was created and patented, that there's a patent on this virus that is going around. And I can't confirm that either. So I'm not out here just spreading stuff. It's just things that you kind of see floating around, and it all kind of makes you go, and is it legitimate? I don't know. I think at this point that we're not looking at right now an actual pandemic. This does sound like it has the potential to grow into that, but so do many others. I mean, we thought that about, swine flu and H1N1 and Ebola and many others that were quickly taken out or quickly fizzled out or whatever kind of happened to them. And again, I'm quite confident that many of those were, there were some nefarious things going on behind closed doors that you and I are not privy to. And you may call me just some crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, but the government has shown to be untrustworthy, especially when it comes to viral infections and vaccinations, along with these pharmaceutical companies. So I wouldn't put it past them to be behind this one. Maybe not ours, but probably some government is. And it's something that we need to take notice of, because there is a strong potential, because of the amount of population and the way international travel is, that eventually a pandemic could happen, and it could be very devastating for many of the people on this planet. And that's one of the things that a lot of preppers prep for, is pandemics, because they could be so devastating, and it's kind of like a silent killer. You don't really know what's going on until you got it, and it's sometimes too late by the time you realize what's actually happening. So, let's keep watch on this one. And, like I said, it's kind of early to really make this decision of, okay, it's time to panic. But it's certainly something to watch. The guy or girl, I don't know, that was confirmed in the state of Washington. Well, what about all the people on that plane and all the people that they've come in contact with? This virus is contagious before you even know that you have it. So there's definitely a potential for many, many people already here in the United States to have that virus, a potential. So I think the coming days and weeks we'll kind of see what's happening. So, at this point, I don't know that there's much more that we can talk about. Now, if you guys have some information that I don't, as I always, please share it. And I always encourage that. Or if you think that I'm off on something, I just don't want to start getting a lot of hype going because, so far this is happening like many other viruses that have happened over the last decade or two, where they kind of pop up out of nowhere. They go along for a little while and some people get infected and die, and then, it kind of fizzles out. At this point, from what I'm seeing, it doesn't even have a very high mortality rate, unlike, say, Ebola, which was 70 or 70+% death rate of people that contracted it. So at this point, it's not quite to that level, but it's still very new. So what can you actually do to protect yourself? And that's very difficult. Like I said, it's one of the more difficult things to protect yourself from. And one of the top things that I believe, and it's not just my belief, a lot of medical professionals also agree, is just having yourself in good health, increasing your own immune system. And I made a video just a couple of days ago on my Patreon page, and I'll leave a link to that also if you'd like to sign up. It's only $1 a month to get in the door so that you can see some of the extra content and stuff that I post over there. You don't have to. It's cool if you don't. But I was talking about how herbs are really meant, from what I have learned in my study, that herbs can be used acutely, meaning to treat an individual illness, but what they're really beneficial is consuming them, wild plants and herbs, medicinal herbs and wild plants, of consuming them on a daily basis to build up your overall immune system so that you just don't get sick in the first place. I believe that our bodies are created to heal themselves and defend ourselves from illnesses. And if we're fueling our bodies properly, then our bodies are capable of attacking and killing off just about anything. And this isn't just my theory. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Hippocratic Oath of make food thy medicine. So if you're interested in that, there's a link below to that Patreon video. But actually, other than that, if you have been planning on doing some traveling, it may not be the time to be doing traveling for a while, especially out west, which is where the virus first landed. And at this point, that's the only place we know. But of course, it's been long enough now, it could be in places all over the United States. So you might want to rethink travel plans. That's always something to consider when something like this happens, especially outside the United States and especially in highly populated areas. Have a kit with you in your home and in your vehicle with things like masks, like an N95 mask. Those things certainly aren't the best thing when it comes to protecting yourself from airborne illnesses, but they are better than nothing. And most people can't afford or just don't want to lug around some type of big non-rebreather type system. You could invest in the protection suits. They're actually not that expensive. You can get the disposable kind, and they're not too expensive, but most people don't want to go quite to that extreme, but it is possible, and they're very compact and fit in a small bag. In your home, you want to have enough heavy plastic sheeting so that you can kind of seal off your home if it starts to get close to you or it appears that it's growing. Things like duct tape, plastic sheeting. There are options for air filtration in your home. It can get a little pricey, but it certainly could be something that you could look into, especially if you live around people. Now, if you live pretty isolated out in the country in the woods, you're going to have a better odds of not contracting this to begin with, especially if you're able to not be around a lot of people. But if you work or your children go to public schools, it's definitely something more to consider in your home. Personal hygiene is a must. Most alcohol over the 75% mark will kill just about any pathogen. So even though I'm not a big advocate of using them on a regular basis, things like hand sanitizers and rubbing alcohol can certainly help reduce the chance of getting that if you wash your hands. Now, this is airborne, so that's a little different. You don't have to make, physical contact, but certainly make sure your home and areas are clean. If you believe that you have potentially come in contact with it, I would not come into your home. If you've been out at work and you find out someone at work has had it, or you've potentially come in contact with an area that's had it, don't come home and bring it into your home. One thing I remember when I was in law enforcement, we all got in the habit of, because you never know, you go into a home that may have a lot of filth and contamination and drugs and all that kind of stuff, so you never know what you're going to come in contact with. So when we came home, we didn't come in with our work clothes on and our work boots and everything. We would either change at work, or I would come home and go into the garage or something and take my shoes off and take my clothes off, so that I'm not bringing that into the home. And that would be something that you would want to do if you believe that there's a potential of contact, so that you're not bringing it into your home to your family. Learn to do certain types of quarantine things within your own home, so that if it starts to come into your area, how can you quarantine your own home? And there are ways that you can do that to kind of seal yourself off. And of course, at times like this, you want to make sure you have ample food and water supplies, because this is going to be one of those situations, if a pandemic happens either this time or in the future, that you're going to want to bug in. You don't want to be outside very much, unless you're bugging out to a specific location that's more isolated. But whether it's in your home now or to get to a location, once you're there, you want to bug in and kind of isolate yourself from the rest of the world, because most of these viruses don't actually last an extremely long time. Even in a pandemic situation, they kind of go through the area, and many times after several weeks, they kind of die down. And so the chance of you contracting that, if you're able to quarantine your own self, is greatly reduced. So make sure you have ample food and water and medical supplies in your home. A lot of these are upper respiratory, so you want to have things to help kind of clear that up, and drink plenty of water. And if there's something that's a GI issue where there's diarrhea, you want to drink plenty of water. A lot of times things like that, it's not the virus that kills you, it's dehydration that kills you, or it's fluid in the lungs that kills you. So there are some medicinal herbs that can greatly help in those areas to look into. So while I'm not totally sold on this coronavirus being the next big pandemic that takes out half the population, it is a good time to kind of reevaluate your plan for a potential pandemic virus and what you have in stock on hand to protect yourself from it. And use this now as a learning tool. And, in the end, if it looks like that it is a big pandemic, then you're definitely more prepared. So I would definitely start as soon as possible, if you haven't already, of getting yourself ready for a potential pandemic. All right. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.